Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Energize Your Online Business podcast. Hey there, Kate.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Okay, we are digging into part two of a two-part, so the final part of a two-part series about messaging. You absolutely, if you missed the first part, you can absolutely listen to this and then go back to the first part. But we would strongly recommend that you listen to both episodes because there is some important, for lack of a better term, stuff in both of them. Again, stuff, technical copywriting term. Yeah. Okay, so we covered a lot in that first episode, and now we're going to dig in even deeper in this one. Kate, what do you want to start with? Where should we go?
Let's start with using words the audience uses, which we hinted at in episode 1 in the sense that we talked about it not being about you, that you always want it to be about your ideal customer, your target audience. You want it to be about them. And so a big piece of that when you're writing copy or someone, if you have a copywriter, if you're planning to outsource it, that you and your potential copywriter understand what words the audience is actually using. How are they talking about your product, service, offer, program?
Mm-hmm.
Are they talking about it in the same way that you are? Are they talking about it in a slightly different way? Are they using, to use an example I always use because I had one particular copywriting client at one point who used the word clients, not customers. And that was a nuance I needed to know. That was something that they knew that their then and clients were clients and referred to themselves as such versus customers. And so it's small things like that and potentially even larger things of phrases, turns of phrase that you want to be aware of so that you are connecting with them in the best, most effective possible way.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And I think for a lot of course creators and group program creators, a lot of us have created courses or these programs because we used to have that problem, right? The course solves the problem that we used to have. And so we think of ourselves as our own target audience, but that is not true. Back then, you were your own target audience. But since you were in that place, you've had a lot of transformation. You've learned so much, you've grown so much, and therefore you're not speaking the same language as your target audiences. There may be some overlap, certainly, but you're not using the exact same words because even since you solved your problem, the world has evolved. People are referring to things in different ways. New terms and new phrases have become part of the global lexicon, whatever you want to call it. But be very careful about thinking to yourself, well, I know what they're saying because I used to say that. Again, you're not who you were before. And so you're thinking and you're speaking in different ways. Our CSS students know, Circuit Sales System students know that the best way to find out the words that your audience uses is to talk to your audience. Get them on the phone. Don't just send a survey. You're not going to get the results you want. Get them on the phone. Talk to people who've purchased from you. Talk to people who have not purchased from you, and talk to people who haven't even yet had the opportunity to purchase from you, and find out what words they use to describe their struggles, what words they use to describe what they want and what they need, what words they use to describe what success would look like. All of these things you want to dive into and really get it out of their mouths. I think sometimes people think that, well, if I use the words that my audience uses, that's cheating. And it is absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Smart.
It is smart, exactly. Because when your target audience sees the words that they use in their heads to describe things in your materials, on your sales page, in your posts, in your emails, all that kind of stuff, they're going to feel that you understand them. And that is so, so important for making that connection and making them comfortable with following you and purchasing from you.
Yeah, they're going to say, oh my gosh, they get me. Are they in my head? Like that's exactly, this is the person, this person in this program, they understand where I'm at. I think one of the other ways to think about this too, in terms of language and how it continuously evolves is often I think we think of generational languages. So, baby boomers talking different than Gen X, talking different than Gen Z, and how are the kids talking about things? And of course, we don't want to be inauthentic and start using Gen Z vocabulary if that's not our audience. But I think that's one way to look at it, to say, oh yeah, language just continuously is changing and there are new words. There's new, I had a friend tell me recently that instead of saying that's fire, it's now that's gas. Like we're just, yeah, which I don't know if that's accurate, if that's true. Things I wouldn't know. But
I skipped over that's fire completely. So
right. Well, exactly. So, but if I was writing copy for that type of audience, I'd want to know that that's language that they might be using. And again, of course, that might not be your target audience, but is it, to Nikki's point, you've grown and if you're 10 years from when you first had this problem, is your audience in a different demographic than you are right now, potentially? Have you shifted into a different demographic? And is this course or program right for your current demographic, or is it right for a younger demographic or older or whatever? So thinking about that sort of thing and having yourself a style guide in some ways for your brand to say, okay, these are actual words and phrases that I know my target audience uses. And this is an evolving document. This is something that you can continuously revisit as time goes on. But it'll be great reference for you, and it'll be a great reference material for if and when you are outsourcing this to a copywriter. Your copywriter will thank you. But to have some sort of ongoing thing that you can always look back on and say, okay, this is the type of language that I need to be incorporating into my materials.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Number 7, the concept really comes down to don't waste words. We've talked a little bit earlier about in the first episode about how writing is really not just the act of putting words down on the page. It's also then coming back to it and editing, either changing those words, making them more effective, but often taking things out. It pains me to say this because I've done so much writing of copy in my life, but the truth is that no one is going to read all of your copy. And on top of that, the more that you try to pack into messaging, the lower the chances that they're going to read all of it. I think we've get an email and we go, I'm kind of interested. You open the email and it's like, if it is not on focus and telling you exactly the things that you want to know, that you were led, that you were going to learn from the subject line, people are going to leave. And it's very tempting for business owners, especially, to try to pack in everything that they can think of, but that's the exact wrong thing to do.
Yeah, having your focus is crucial, but then it's going back and using copy in a way. So headlines, subheads, bullet points, all of these tools that we have to make it digestible and give people a kind of path to follow. If you think of it like a funnel or an inverted pyramid, if you will, leading to the call to action. So the call to action at the bottom being at the point of that inverted pyramid and the top being the headline. And slowly you go down, focus till they're primed to take that action and they know why they need to, want to, etc. But using those subheads to support the headline, to say, okay, this is the overarching topic of whatever I'm talking about. Here's a more focused piece, and then the body, copy supporting what's under that. Everything really having a purpose and supporting each other. It's so easy to write chunks and chunks of text. And again, get your separate Word or Google Doc and take stuff that you're taking out in case it's useful and you find value for it somewhere else later.
Yeah, as you guys know, we have one of our other brands teaches people to become professional copywriters. And one of the things that we teach them is there has to be a reason you choose to put every single word in that piece of copy. There has to be a purpose for everything that you do. And the same thing goes for us as we're writing our own copy and our own messaging. Why does this phrase have to be in there? Why does this sentence have to be in there? Why does this word? Why am I choosing this word instead of other ones? And I know that sounds like, down to every single word. It will get easier the more that you do it, certainly. But even if you just think of it in terms of why does this piece of information need to be in there? Or maybe a better question, does this piece of information need to be in there? Is this something that leads them toward the result or the action that I want them to take? Or is this something that's Adding information that I kind of think is important, but maybe they don't need to know it at this point. Maybe there's some place later on that they can find this information out, or that I can share this information with them. And then the same thing too, it's very tempting to pack your sentences. Well, I have so much to say. It's very tempting. And I think it's probably based on the way that we were taught in school, but to make your sentences very long. And first of all, it's not the way people actually speak. It's not the way we even want to consume information. And also, when you make your sentence long, what you're requiring someone to do is start reading and remember the information from the beginning of the sentence and keep that information in their head and still follow all of the rest of the sentence all the way through to the end, which could be 20, 25, 30, 50, all this. And what ends up happening is they forget, because that's not how our brains work, they forget the information from the beginning of the sentence. So when you have long sentences, you are making people do a lot of work and they're not able to retain that information. Whereas when you give them short sentences, or like Kate was saying, when you use bullets when it's applicable, when you have a list of something, or when you use phrases, it doesn't, one of the cool things about copywriting, of many cool things, you can break so many of the grammar rules. It doesn't have to be, well, this has to be a full sentence and I can't start a sentence with, I don't know,
and or but or because.
Exactly. Yeah. If it sounds like the way someone would actually speak, then it's fair game. Absolutely. But just be really, and then by that same token, don't throw a bunch of words into a paragraph. Make it easy to get through. If you have a big long paragraph, break it into a couple of different pieces or go through. There's one of the reasons, this is one of the reasons why we tell our students, our circuit sales system students, read through your writing and read it aloud. Because when you start a long sentence, you don't have breath by the time you get to the end of the sentence, your sentence is too long. Or you find yourself reading and it's too long. You will know in your gut when something is too long. Listen to your gut and cut it, take stuff out.
Yeah. And start to notice too, when you're on your mobile device and what you're consuming and how you're reading there, one sentence can become an entire paragraph on mobile. So it takes up more space than you even realize. If you're writing in a Google or Word doc, that one line across that document is going to be multiple lines, depending even on a desktop, especially on mobile. And so the size and space becomes a different thing to kind of keep in the back of your mind. Obviously, you want to get the most important information out. That's first and foremost. You don't necessarily want to dictate what you're writing based on, it's too long, but knowing, okay, they absolutely need this information. I've cut out the superfluous things. Great. Let me maybe try to break this up into 2 sentences instead of 1. And knowing that this is copy. This is, when you're writing it, you're not writing a blog post. You're not writing a piece of content. And so that is a very different medium that has a different purpose. And so going back to the first episode and having a purpose and knowing what that purpose is, knowing what your medium is, and writing your copy for that specific purpose versus thinking of it and approaching it like you would a blog post or a different piece of content.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. So number 8, be consistent. And this consistency is, we'll talk about it in a couple of different ways. Number 1, Kate mentioned earlier having a tone guide. I use these words. I don't use these words. This is my brand's personality. This is not my brand's personality. Number 1, it's really important to be consistent across the board. All of your messaging should sound like it comes from you, and all of it shouldn't sound like 2 different people from one day to the next in your emails or in your social posts or all of that kind of stuff. And even if you hire a copywriter, it should never be that copywriter's voice. That copywriter, a good copywriter, will be able to hop right in and pick up your tone of voice so that it sounds like that it's seamless. No one can tell whether you wrote it or whether someone else wrote it. So you need to be consistent, and you need to be consistent in your choices too. And this can be little things, even I say little, but it's actually not that little, but do you capitalize all of your headlines and do you capitalize the first word in all of your subject lines? And it sounds like little things, but these little things are cues for people about how serious you are as a brand and how trustworthy you are. These are tiny little cues that if you are inconsistent, They may not realize it, but people's brains are telling them that inconsistency means that you might not be as trustworthy or as serious of a brand. Yeah.
And I think one of the things to think about too with your messaging being consistent too is some of the phrasing that you're using to talk about your program or offer needs to be relatively consistent. And I think sometimes we think if we repeat ourselves in multiple areas with the same copy that people are going to be bored or that's not okay, when in fact you do want to use some of your key messaging points. You want to put them everywhere.
Yeah.
And they can be line for line the same copy because people need to see and hear that same message multiple times before it either registers and again, to build that trust that you are talking about things in a consistent and same way. They're not doubting if they see it one way and then say, wait, but they said this last time and this feels a little bit different. What does this mean? You don't want to raise doubt in your audience's minds. You want them to be very clear about what you're offering, what the benefit is to them. There might be multiple benefits, but making sure if you're talking about one benefit in this way, that you're talking about it in that way consistently through your materials. Certainly, you can test this copy and to say, okay, if I talk about benefit one this way and I talk about it this way, which one registers more with my audience, and do that test and get that information. But then saying, okay, this test A beat out B. I'm going to use this A messaging across then all of the places that I'm talking about this particular benefit. And that is okay. I think sometimes we see our messaging so much that we're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sick of seeing this. But knowing that when it's out in the world, people might not see it. They might see it a couple of times. And you might be putting it out 5, 6, 10, 12 different places on multiple different channels. People might not be on all of those channels. They might not see it again every time. So repetition and that consistency is critical because for the people that do start to see it multiple times, that starts to feel, okay, this brand, I can trust what they're saying. They're saying this in a way that is, they're not flip-flopping or being wishy-washy about what they're trying to communicate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I say absolutely every time. Yes, I believe that we are right about these 10 points. Point number 9, we talked about this a little bit, but we want to dig in a little bit deeper here. This is to use a single CTA. And by CTA, we mean call to action. And a call to action is simply telling them what to do next. We talked a little bit earlier about every piece that you're working on has a purpose, and you want to direct them to do something. What a mistake that we see often is emails or pages or all that kind of thing that have a bunch of different calls to action. An email that says, click here to purchase and follow us on Instagram and read our latest blog post and listen to our recent podcast, all of that kind of thing. But here's the thing. One person is only capable of taking one action at a time. So what is, in whatever piece you're working on, what is that one action that you most want them to take? Now, you could have a secondary action. Maybe it's a click here to watch the video, or don't forget to watch the video, make sure to watch it. And then maybe further down you say, hey, once you watch the video, be sure to check out this testimonial from so-and-so, or check out this testimonial first and then watch it. But what is the one main thing that you want people to do? You also need to make sure that it's conveyed as the one main thing. Because again, you can't have one person taking 2 simultaneous actions. They can only take one action. So you need to be clear, and then you need to make it clear to them what that one action is that you want them to take.
Yeah, this is where design and copy kind of meet. I mean, they meet in a lot of places, but this place in particular, to have hierarchy to your calls to action. If you are saying, okay, this is the main thing I want to do, and if follow us on Instagram is a secondary call to action, making it very clear that it is secondary, that it is less important. So it might be the size and weight of the call to action. Maybe the main one is a button and this is a text link, or obviously in the order of if it's an email or web page or whatever, that it's the main one is higher up, and it's maybe in multiple places that you can have it, you can repeat it in multiple key areas. So if someone's not scrolling all the way to the end, if it's a really long email or if it's a web page that's very long and you need the same CTA in a couple of different places, again, that's where consistency comes in, where you want to have that same call to action. If you are talking about on testimonials page, and you were saying see more testimonials is the thing, and that's what you want, the purpose of this page and what you want people to do, then every place you have it, you want to have that consistent CTA then versus saying see testimonials, but now also go read a blog or whatever it is. So thinking about how that lays out with copy and design playing together.
Yeah. And you can change the language. You can say,
Certainly,
check out our testimonials, read Natalie's story and more, or, watch Natalie's story and more, or see a few of our student success stories, that kind of thing. But to Kate's point, that the action that you're calling them to take, it's all the same action. And then maybe in a PS, you have hey, want to know more about XYZ? Check out this blog post. But the main action is all consistent and singular. Yeah. Okay, that brings us to number 10. And we have been kind of teasing this in a couple of different places. But the concept is copywriting is not done when you're done writing, which I can just hear everyone out there groaning like, oh, it took me so much just to sit down and actually write this. What do you mean I wrote it? Doesn't that mean that I'm done? Oh, well, friend, no. It does not mean that you are done.
It's you're done with a portion of the writing process, which is great. This is why we always say too, though, with anything you need to give yourself time, and as much time as possible, to build in time to walk away, to build in, I call it sleep on it time. If you can't actually give yourself 24 hours to sleep on something and come back with fresh eyes, again, at least having time to walk away from your computer and come back so that you can look at it from the perspective of, okay, I wrote this, and I wrote this from the perspective, if you're the business owner, that perspective. But to look at it now when you come back to say, okay, I'm going to step aside as best as possible and act like a user. And again, I'm reading this. Okay, does this make sense to me as my target audience? Does this next line need to be here to support this point? Or is it something that belongs somewhere else? Do they need to know this right now? So kind of going through everything that was in the checklist and going back through as part of number 10, and really starting with number 1 of, did this achieve the purpose that I set out in point number 1 in the first step on my checklist? Did I hit on the benefit to consumer? Is the benefit very clear? Is the call to action very clear? Do I know where I would go next if I clicked this link or this button? So really just reviewing everything that you've just done from that as fresh as possible lens.
Yeah. Editing is just as important as writing. And quite frankly, that should make you feel good. That should bring a little bit of relief.
Less pressure.
Exactly. When you sit down to write something, it doesn't mean that you have to get it perfect in that one shot.
You shouldn't.
You shouldn't. The big secret is we professional writers, we don't.
We make a mess.
We get down, we make a mess. We get down and we put all the stuff in there. And then to Kate's point, whenever possible, walk away. Take a shower, do something non-business related, if at all possible, because your brain actually takes that time to marinate, to think things through and to solve problems. If you guys, maybe it sounds a little dorky, but I really like crossword puzzles. And the Sunday New York Times crossword puzzle is a favorite. And usually
it's a doozy.
Pretty good. It's a doozy, but usually I'm pretty good. This is years of training. But there will sometimes be, I can't figure this one out. So set it aside, do something else, come back to it, and all of a sudden, there it is. There's the solution. And that's how our brains work. When we set something aside, our brain is still working on it so that we can have a better solution when we come back to it. So allow your brain the opportunity to do that, to think it through when you don't have to be conscious with it. And again, do something that, if at all possible, is not work related. Don't go from, well, I'm writing copy about this, so I'm going to take a break by writing copy about this, or I'm writing copy, try to separate yourself from that. It's a good time to do the stuff around the house. It's a good time to go for a walk, or, maybe end your day with that and then start your day with it. But give your brain a little bit of time to think it through and to come up with some new options while you don't have to be consciously doing it.
And one of the reasons why writing is just kind of the first step in the process, and editing obviously comes, is because you're going to want to test your copy. It's, again, never perfect. It's always a work in progress. And that's a good thing, because there's opportunity. There's always opportunity to make it better, to was going to say ooch up the open rates on an email to test that subject line, to increase the click-through rates on an email, to increase the amount of clicks on a certain landing page and increase the amount of leads you get from an opt-in page. There's always opportunities to test. If I change this headline, does that increase opt-ins? If I change the call to action and the language on that, does that increase the number of clicks on that button? If I just all of the possible, there's infinite possibilities, which can be overwhelming, but it's also exciting. And if it's an opportunity, and to look at it as a way to say, okay, I had these two ideas as I was writing this for a headline. And so as you're doing that, if you do have two different ideas, to say, okay, I'm going to save one. I think this is the one that I think would perform best, but let me test it and find out and see what happens. And that might give you more information too. Okay, this language in this, does that resonate on this other medium or this other channel? Or is that something place I can use in another area and test it there and see if that helps increase whatever it is that you're looking to increase? And so looking at your numbers consistently to say, what opportunities do I have? I know my audience, I know they're talking like this. Does saying it in this way resonate even more? And so again, looking at the numbers to help guide those decisions.
Yeah, you're always putting your best foot forward when it comes to your messaging. You and if you hire a copywriter, always your best foot forward. However, you're not a perfect mind reader. And we see testing a lot in ads, but testing is also, to Kate's point, important in subject lines and in headlines. And there's so many opportunities to test, because while you can put your best foot forward, and based on all the market research you've done, all the things you've learned about the way people talk about things, you just can't perfectly know what's going to perform best. I have been a business owner for over a decade. I've been a copywriter for more than 20 years. And I will tell you that there will still be times when we go, all right, let's test these two against each other. This one is test A is definitely going to win, but let's test these two just to see. And then for whatever reason, test B is the one that wins. Again, all this experience, I know my target audiences, but still for some reason, something else will perform better. Or the opposite, like, oh, I'm going to test it against this. This is going to have a major lift. It's going to have a huge change. We see this a lot. We're going to test this out, and it's going to be so huge. And it doesn't actually really make a difference. But you can't know that unless you test it. And this is, again, another thing where it doesn't have to be perfect when you first write it. You'll write it, and then you'll edit it, and then you'll put it out in the world, and then you'll test it. And it's just an opportunity to just continually refine and make it better. Take, open rates, for example. We're going to test that, and let's see if we can get that open rate up a little bit. And let's get it from here to here and here to here. And the thing is that, a 2% open rate difference, it can be like, well, it's 2%. What's the point of view? Let's say you have 1,000 people getting an email. Well, 2%, yes, that's 20 more people who are seeing your messaging and potentially clicking through and potentially purchasing. And I think for all of us, we all want those 20 people. If it's 10,000 people, then it's 200 people that are seeing that message. So it can seem like, well, it's just 1 or 2 percentage points. But also when you start adding these percentage points up, all right, well, I tested the subject line, and that improved open rates by 2%. And I tested the copy within the email, and that improved click-through rate by 3 or 4%. And then I texted this, and then it all adds up, so that in the end, it can be a huge revenue lift for you by just making these kind of incremental copy tests.
Yeah, it again lowers the pressure on getting it perfect, because it's never going to be perfect. It's going to be, again, to Nicki's point, you're putting your best foot forward, but then getting more information that you can use to continuously perfect it, if you will. Again, never being perfect, but perfecting it.
Exactly. Always room for improvement. Yeah. So again, a reminder that this was part 2 of a series, and also a reminder that we borrowed these 10 points from
came from your brain.
We lifted it. Yeah, from my brain, my book. The book that I wrote called Copywriting Strategies, a no-nonsense guide to writing persuasive copy for your business. This just gets, obviously, it's much more than those 10 points in the book, but for those 10 points, we get in a lot deeper. There are exercises in the book and dig into a little bit more. If you're interested, we'll put the link, certainly buy it if you want to. Don't buy it if you don't want to. But if this has kind of sparked some things for you, that can be a good next step. And then you've got something you can refer back to again and again. But again, make sure to go back to episode 1 so you've got all 10 points because all of these will make a great checklist as you are writing, as you are editing, and also to point 10, as you are testing your work. And we'll say it again, messaging is the most important part of your business. The better your messaging is, the better your business results will be. So this is not something that you want to completely outsource. Absolutely, if you want to hire a copywriter, great, but you need to understand these fundamental concepts so that you can work with your copywriter to get an even better result. So if you're writing your own copy, then you definitely need to have a really good handle on these. And the good news is you'll get better and better at these and more comfortable with them. Okay, so we've given you a lot to do, but it's all stuff that is going to have major positive impacts on your business. So time to get to it. And with that, we will catch you guys in the next episode. Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Do you want to learn how to sell and scale your offer on autopilot every single day without the chaos of live launching or the low conversions of Evergreen? Who doesn't, right? Get our free on-demand video training at circuitsalessystem.com/free. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel to make sure you never miss a video. We'll catch you next time.